Well, hello everybody, and once in a while I like to show people things that I buy Mark 1 related. You've seen my enormous brochure collection and it's ever increasing, and it has definitely increased my knowledge over Mark 1 specs. It's not usually my forte, believe it or not, with specifications, and I think some people have worked that one out. I take more of an interest in the sort of auto-mechanical side of car automotive stuff. I prefer to read manuals rather than brochures, which is why I know what I know about cars in general. I take a keen interest in engineering, and I've just found something which is a bit of a cross between what I enjoy and what a lot of other people enjoy with the brochures, in the form of some technical service training manuals for students that would have been trained by Ford, probably for the dealerships, maybe in the factories, in some cases, or the apprentices. And these are very familiar to most Ford people who've collected a couple of these brochures. I've got a couple of these for Ruby, but I never thought for Mark 1 Focus you could obtain paper copies. This was at an age, remember, in the late 90s, early noughties, where things were starting to become slightly digitalised. So I was thinking, well, I don't think I've seen a Mark 1 Focus mentioned in the service training books. But hey and behold, they do, and getting them in English is extremely difficult. Most of them are in German, so I suspect most of the training was conducted in Germany, in Saarlouis or wherever. And most of the time you didn't really get much over here, but we have, and I've obtained a complete set, a really complete set. Let's go. Yes, most people will be very familiar with the student information books, the technical service training. I love these things. I've got one for the CTX for the Mark III up there. They are so comprehensive, it's untrue. If you want to learn about any particular item, this is the book to gather. I mean, oh yes, honestly. Now, I have bought a complete set. Now, there was only one missing, which I had to obtain somewhere else. But basically, the entire set from 1998, because this is the date. Well, look at this. Ford work, I can't even pronounce that, printed in Germany. Service training programs. Yeah, printed on chlorine-free bleach paper, please. Yeah, so that's the first one, Focus New Product Information 00269, or presumably 00269. The next one is 270, that's the overview, by the way. The next one is the body, to talk about how the body is put together, 270. 271 is the 1.8 Endura DI, okay, which is sometimes known as the Lynx, the diesel engine, in its first form, the TDDI in the Focus 271. I have learnt a lot about that engine. I'm really pleased to have obtained that, because my knowledge on the diesels is very lacking, and it is no longer lacking. There's so much that the Haynes manual is rubbish for all of this. It just doesn't, it describes how to do things, but it doesn't really say what things do. It's more generic. You think that the same things have been copied and pasted from other Haynes manuals on different cars, particularly when talking about sensors. The new product information, the 4F27E automatic transmission 272. I was after this one separately. When I was looking for this, people were asking £20 just for that. I bought the whole, by the way, I bought this whole set for about 20 quid. All in total with this separate one down here. So that came with it. And the last one was the 273 overview. Can't remember what that entails, actually. And that was the complete set that I bought. And that was the set you bought, you had at the launch, okay? That's the complete set. I don't think there was any more. There wasn't 274. No, it was never. In fact, it lists it in the main one. So if I go back to the first one, it will tell you. So 269, 270, 271, 272, 273. There you go. However, the 2001.5 Focus, yeah. Now, I don't know if there are any more brochures on the facelifted Focus, but if anybody might have one, please get in touch. So this is a question mark whether I may have all of them or not, because technically the 2001.5 Focus is a new product. New product information: the Duratorque TDCi diesel engine with its distribution rail and high pressure pump. Pretty much the same engine, but it needs more sensors and a much more powerful variable turbocharger, which is what's responsible for most of the power output there. So I'm going to go through all these ones. It's going to be a brief overview of these brochures. I will try and go into more detail later down the line. I'm opening the door because, you know, the brochures thing, I haven't even started filming any of that yet. There's just so much for me to get through. So let's start with the most useful one as far as I'm concerned, the introduction one. Oh, by the way, these, apart from the back one, the TDCi one, I had to buy that separately. As you can see, it's a bit more yellow and oily. These are brand new. Don't spill my coffee. Put it over there. These are brand new. Absolutely. I don't really care if they weren't brand new, but they are brand new. I'm going to try and get a proper folder to put them in. I don't know if there's a Ford folder that they used to go into, that they used to give the students. If any of you can find one and give me a link, I'll be really appreciative. It just looks like a binder, but presumably it would be a blue Ford one. I'd like one of them. But as far as the Mark 1 Focus is concerned, I consider this to be the Bible, because it really does go into really good detail. It will tell you what engines go with what transmissions. I'm trying to sort of highlight this in a bit. Oh, that's better. I've just put the zoom on. We'll go over the dimensions of the vehicle. The saloon is only about 140 millimeters more than the standard hatchback. And obviously the estate is about 200 millimeters more than that. Raising and jacking the vehicle. Curious, interesting. So it tells you can mount it on the pinch welds at the back, but it doesn't say you can mount it on the pinch welds at the front. Now this is generally, these 2 points on the chassis rails, that is where I jack up my Mark 1. Any Mark 1, I use those 2 jacking points. But there really isn't a place at the back for you to do so safely, so I'm afraid you have to use the sills, and usually those bits are a bit rotten. That's the only thing. So that's interesting how it tells you to jack up on the chassis legs. Opening the hood, yeah, we know about that, and where to find the basic stuff under the hood. You've got safety features, active safety and passive safety. Active safety covers all the features which help to prevent an accident, like power assisted steering, the suspension, the ABS, the electronic stability program. I've learned so much about that in this book, I can tell you, and it really puts me off. Anybody with an ESP, a model fitted with ESP, be very careful. We've got the airbag and pre-tensioner system with all the supplements going. That's interesting. Got the rear suspension. The chassis, just describing some of the features of the chassis. What sort of tyres you'd have obtained brand new. Looking at the power steering system. Now, a lot of people, actually, I've put this out now, you don't get... I've got this system, you've clearly seen this on my Focus, where you've got this circular cooling pipe. But some people have, and I've noticed this more often, is they've just got a straight pipe. It just goes straight. It doesn't go wiggly. So that's quite interesting. How they might have, for some reason, I think they may have just skimped a little bit. But interestingly, 2 different powered hydraulic pumps can be used on the Focus, can be distinguished by their housing. A grey cast iron housing without a power steering pressure switch for vehicles with a diesel engine. That's correct, because on the diesel engine models, the power steering switch is mounted on the rail. However, I'm being told by a few people with TDDIs, they can't find them. So did the TDI not have a power steering switch? See, this is a weird one, actually. And a light alloy housing for the ones with a switch. The turning circle is 10.9 metres and the steering geometry is 3.0 turns lock to lock. I didn't know that either. What I did know is that the front axle steering geometry is producing a negative steering offset, i.e. negative camber. That goes for show because most cars of this age have negative camber, where the wheels are like that, not like that as positive camber. Old cars have that before power steering was kind of standard. You've got the entire steering column. That's quite interesting. You will have a steering wheel position sensor on the ESP models, which is number 5. This one here. These are things why I think ESP models are going to... I think if you own one and you want to keep it, I think you should find another one and strip it for spares. I really honestly do. There's too many sensors. You've got the suspension setup all split apart. Pretty much like the Haynes manual, but it goes into detail on all these bits and pieces and what they do. The front subframe. Yes, absolutely. I certainly know about that, don't we, guys? Obviously, you've got the 2 points here where you do your excuse me, the alignment. Did you know that these holes, I did point this out in the video, I'll say it again, these holes are so that you can get an extension bar towards the top cross subframe bolts where they attach to the chassis legs. I didn't know that before. I did after reading that. The lower arms, everything you need to know about that. The detail is ridiculous. The strut towers and the mountings at the top of the strut towers. Rear suspension, brake systems, adjusting the toe setting, front brakes. I think I might need to actually do a whole video, to be honest, of me going through this and reading it properly, but I just want to show you exactly what these entail. You may want to go and look out for them. The brake hydraulics, a 4-channel anti-lock braking system is available as standard in certain territories. Well, it certainly wasn't it. By the way, a lot of these it could be German specs. It says it was standard in D, DK and N. I don't know what that means, but weird one. And this is certainly not true. A traction control system is optional with ABS for the 1.4 Zetec SE models. That's wrong. It was never that case in the UK. It might have been for Europe, but the ESP is also an option, which includes ABS and TCS. Well, the ESP module is an ABS traction control module all built in. So it's got the ABS pump as well. It's all one unit. That's something else. And it just tells you how the ESP actually works and how it stabilises the car. It basically brakes one of the rear wheels or one of the front ones, depending if it's understeer or oversteer and where you're steering. That's why you got a steering wheel sensor, because it's to tell the ESP module which way you want to turn the wheel and where you're expecting to travel and where the car's going. And there's a couple of what I call yaw sensors. They're gravity sensors, and they sense the lateral movement of the car forwards and backwards and side to side, and they will use the information along with the steering wheel input to tell the ESP module which wheel to start braking, basically. And if it needs to reduce the engine torque through the ECU. Again, as an example of understeering, oversteering, etc. If it's understeer, it will brake while the back wheels. If it's oversteer, it will brake while the front wheels, by the way. And these are the sensors involved in the system. Even this is different. You have got an active brake booster with pressure sensors on it. You know, the ESP models are a bit of a pain. You've got the wheel sensors, you've got the lateral and yaw rate sensors, like I said, to detect velocity and where the car is moving forwards and backwards, side to side. The ESP module, which incorporates traction control and ABS. It's only minorly different from an ABS module, but it's different. And the steering wheel position sensor. These are the items that you need to get if you've got one of them. Trust me, yeah, you've got that. And it goes into detail on all these sensors: ESP module, wheel speed, steering wheel position, lateral acceleration and yaw rate sensors, and the active brake booster. I mean, if you read into how this works, it's really clever. And how the system operates, the working principle. So you've got this flow chart, and that's what the ECU goes for. That's what the ECU working principle is. Oh, there's just so much. What engines go with what gearboxes? Oh, obviously at this stage you can only get the 1.6 with the 4-speed auto, just to say. Zetec SE engines, and it goes into detail how the 1.6 and the 1.4 inner focus differ from the Fiesta Mark IV Zetec SSEs, the Sigma, and what items have been changed. Not too much, but the main one for me is the cylinder head temperature sensor, which replaces the engine coolant temperature sensor, and it tells you all sorts of power outputs, stroke, cylinder head gasket identification between the 1.4, 1.6, the addition of a NOx sensor. Yeah, not every Sigma got that though. Later on, it was cost cutting. The fuel rail, the eye mounting, the cylinder head temperature sensor. The coolant outlet, yes, because in the Fiesta Mark IV, you would have a coolant gauge sensor and an engine coolant temperature sensor. On a Mark I, this is unique. It's got blanked off pieces. Don't confuse that item, and make sure you got the right gasket for that elbow. Sorry about that. Okay, it goes under the coil pack. Be very careful. We've got a mass airflow sensor. The throttle body has been altered. And then we've got the Zetec E engine. Again, going through all the specs and what has been changed from when it was introduced when it was available in the Mondeo and the Cougar. Again, cylinder head temperature sensor. Again, that's been changed and there's a blank. The oil pan's been changed. The exhaust and intake have been changed. The throttle body's been changed. There is no EGR system needed to meet the current emissions standard. The thermostat housing has been modified due to the elimination of the ECT sensor. Again, they've blanked it off. Again, be careful when buying thermostat housings, because you could buy one with the hole for the sensor and then you'd have to send it back. Yeah, the oil pan, I've got to change that on Mr. Ink, because they're 30 quid and you don't need to remove the exhaust out the way. That was a very good design feature of that. So I'll be getting a new one. I'm not even going to bother refurbishing the old one. Intake, exhaust manifolds, a tri-metal catalytic converter using palladium in addition to the normal coating of platinum and rhodium. This is the sort of detail that I want to know that you cannot get from the Haynes manual. This is great. The throttle body, the CHT sensor, by the way, the reason I didn't change that is because its position is right by the damn alternator. Oh, God, honestly. Yep, you got a blank on the thermostat housing. That would have been for the coolant temperature sensor. It's been blanked off. And how all the sensors communicate with the ECU and all the sensors involved. This is the entire list of sensors. Powertrain control modules. If you have an automatic transmission model, you have got 104 pins because we have a transmission controller. If you have a normal Zetec SE or E engine, you will have a 60-pin ECU. I believe that diesel ECUs were also 104 pins. NOx sensor only on the Zetec SE engines. There's some engine management. CHT sensor. This does an awful lot of things. This is not just a temperature sensor, guys. It controls your fueling and everything. This is why it's so crucial to get it changed. As I say, I'll change mine at some point when I can. But it really is crucial to have a look at this at some point. The alternator control, the smart charge system where the ECU controls the alternator and switches it off when it wants to. Yes, did you know that? Then we have an introduction to the TDI. Remember, this is an overview book. We got the MTX 75. Yes, apps. Hold on. Yeah, hold on, that's not right. No, sorry, it was the engine at a glance IB5. That's an MTX75 because the MTX75 has the selector cables at the back. No, that's an IB5. Stupid me. It goes through all the changes that may have been made and the MTX75 as well. See, we've got the cables and shifts at the back. Clutch master system, automatic transmission, drive shafts. The detail is ridiculous. It's mind-boggling. The vehicle electrics. Yeah, the multiplex data system. Up to 4 data bus systems can be used in a Focus depending on the model. We've got the SCP, the standard corporate protocol, the ISO 9141 diagnostic interface. By the way, that's mostly, it's not just diagnostics, it's the supplementary restraint system as well. CAN, controller area network, CAN bus. It's a lot for your lights and everything. ACP, audio communications protocol. The SCP data bus provides communication between the engine management, the EEC5 PCM, the vehicle dynamic system, which would be the ABS, EBD, traction control, ESP, and the instrument cluster. It all communicates together. It's also connected to the data link controller. So that will be for your diagnostics. The data bus is also used for the diagnostic controller. The ISO would be for the telematics system, the airbag module, like I said, the central timer, central locking, telematics, and booster heater for vehicles with a diesel engine. I like to know what a booster heater looks like. I've seen half a picture one in black and white in the Haynes manual, but I've never actually seen one. I think they're sort of Sweden, sort of Finnish sort of market. But yeah, if your vehicle is equipped with a CD auto changer, the changer is controlled by the audio unit through the 4th data bus, the ACP data bus, the audio communication protocol. This is how everything communicates. That is something you just can't get in terms of information anywhere else. The central timer module, you will have this if you have a pre-facelift on the back of the center console. The GEM module kind of replaced that function. The alternator, the smart charge system and how it works. It's just ridiculous. Right, I'm going to just skip the rest of that because that's the overview. Now this is, but that's not an overview. That's just a brief outlook of the whole thing, which is why it took so long. The overview, the next one, looks at everything in a bit more detail. Again, some of the information is the same. Some of it's different, so you have to kind of go through and have a look. Again, just lessons on the... I think it's quite similar, actually, but it goes through your engines as well, that one. Automatic transmission. Now, I've got to be honest, I know pretty much most of what I need to know about this. The main ones that you might need to learn about is the sensors and how it shifts. That way, you can have a kind of an idea of how it goes together. Torque converter. This diagram just baffles me, even for somebody who understands automatics. This is the principal working of an automatic using planetary gear sets, a sun gear, planet gears, ring gear. It's like a solar system. The valve block, where are your solenoids? I will tell you actually, the shift solenoids, number 2. These 2 solenoids here are the on-off solenoids. They either work on or they're off. They fail quite frequently. They pack up. Touch wood, 50 Shades has not had a problem, and Mr. Ink, but nevertheless, I've got some spares because they pack up. All these solenoids are pressure-inducing solenoids, all these 4. These are pulse width modulation solenoids. They work on the basis of modifying the pressure to certain areas of the valve block, and this one here controls the pressure, regulates the pressure through the entire valve block. So this one controls the pressure coming through here. These 3 control the pressure going to the clutches or the through the valve block to the clutches, brake bands, pistons, and these 2 are either on or off depending on what gear you've selected. There should be... That's with the casing off. That's the gear selector mechanism. That's what happens when you activate certain gears, third gear, fourth gear. So you can see how it kind of works in reverse. The sensors, yeah, there's a lot of communication going on. The PCM, describing some of the sensors and how important they are. Absolutely. So I'm going to leave that there. Again, that's another one for another day. The diesel engine, bloody hell. This goes, I learned a lot from this. Again, how this differs from the earlier versions. I would say the Endura DE was what it was known before. There are certain differences. Again, it uses a cylinder head temperature sensor, a Bosch VP distributor pump, which unfortunately the reason that the TDCI was kind of brought out, one, the turbocharger. On the TDCI, the turbocharger is variable, and you find this out from here, okay? And that's what gets the power from 90 to 115, by the way. That's why the diesels are much more powerful, because of that variable vane turbocharger. But also the fuel system was much better for sound emissions economy. However, there are people who have proven that actually there's not much that difference. It was a lot of marketing, I think, that went into this. A TDCI has way more sensors than this, and the TDDI is a much more DIY friendly engine, even though we've got a problem, which is the pump control module. If that packs up, it's basically linked to your immobilizer system, the immobilizer chip, your key, the PATs. And that's a bit of a problem if it packs up, because if it packs up, then the link between the PATs and the module cuts out and the engine won't start. But the main problem between the two pumps is, which was cured with this pump, is because there was no way of separating the fuel metering, the quantity of fuel coming in and the pressure of fuel. There was no way of separating the two, whereas this pump does that. I think that's where Ford had and that's quite important with diesels as well. It was also to minimise the amount of returning fuel, okay? Because when the fuel leaks off and comes back to the pump, the fuel that's leaked off is hotter. That's not good either. We don't want the fuel to be hot because it's gone through to the injector, it's warmed up and leaked off and come back. The TDCI eliminates a lot of leak-off pressure. So on this engine, it was designed to give less leak-off fuel, basically, in many situations. So using fuel more economically. But yeah, it's quite an old-school engine, cast iron. Has to be quite strong, 8 valves, just goes into all the cases, and obviously it uses glow plugs mounted directly into the combustion chamber. We've got the EGR system, which actually changes. I think. No. Oh, obviously we have a dual mass flywheel with that and a vibration damper. There is some minor differences. So the EGR system, you've got an EGR cooler, variable. The turbocharger is it's just a standard turbocharger. This is variable. There was a flange that they replaced because there used to be a clip which used to slip off, that used to leak. We've got obviously the EGR system there. Here we've got an EGR, but with a diaphragm as well to stop shaking when you turn the engine off, because you get a bit of diesel shake when you turn the engine off. So that vacuum diaphragm injects a bit more air and just evens it out a little bit more to stop the shaking issue. Timing it. Now, this book describes how to do the timing belt. Now, so we've got a chain that drives from the crank to drive the pump. But from the belt's perspective, well, it's quite easy in practice. You just got to line that hole up effectively. But it's not quite so simple, because a lot of these diesel pumps, they may have slipped over time. There's some internal diesel pump timing. And as my friend Adam will tell me, who is the diesel expert in the Mark 1 group, it's not so easy. He's looked at a few pumps off TDD ice on the scrapyard and their internal timing has gone off, i.e. you cannot put a 6mm drill bit through that hole and it lines up perfectly. You can't do it. Someone has actually messed with the internal timing, or the timing has gone off, meaning it will run, but it won't run as efficiently as it should. And I've witnessed that from Adam's own TDDI before he sorted the timing issue out, but it's taken a long time to sort that out. We'll go into that in another stage, but we'll be doing a lot more on diesels this year, I'm hoping. But yeah, the fuel injection pump drive, driven by a chain. You've got the covers. Just goes into how you take the sections apart. In fact, it's not really a Haynes manual in terms of what to take off, but it does actually. It tells you certain bits and pieces. You've got an oil pressure switch, you've got the oil cooler. That was uprated for the TDCI, where it was a little bit bigger. The coolant circuit, the water pump, the thermostat housing, the fuel filter, that was again changed with a non-return, I think, on the TDCI to warm up some of the fuel from a cold start. Just keep it within the system in the engine bay. It goes, oh God, the injection pump. I'm trying to get my head around how an injection pump works, but I'm getting there. We have a rotation angle sensor to detect where the actual timing is with the fuel pump. It sends its signal to the ECU. By the way, the ECU is what controls all the sensors to do with the diesel system. Now, on the TDCI, they came up with its own ECU. It's the pump module controller. I think it's called the IDM, and that is mounted underneath the battery, and that is what controls all the sensors. So it takes the strain off the ECU. It's like a pump control ECU, whereas this has got a pump module on the pump itself. So between the two books, I've learned a ton, and that's the tip of the iceberg. In terms of the bodywork, I'm just going to flip through this because it goes into a great detail about how different structures of the body are put together. This is interesting. So have you noticed that there's a honeycomb plastic material underneath the cross member, underneath this metal steel shell? That is because the steel panel can be so much thinner and lighter, but still strong, because it uses this, oh goodness me, what do you call? I think it's like a hybrid sort of plastic that they used just underneath the actual steel. The steel can be 0.5 millimeters thick, but still be strong in an accident because of all this plastic honeycomb. I have noticed that and found that curious. There's so many things that I've found out about that, particularly the front structure, how the estate's different, how the back panels are mounted, how does the floor mount. I've seen it all put together, and I'll tell you what, the metal is so flimsy until it's tacked together and welded together. Obviously, a monocoque construction is useless until it's all welded together. You've got all the panels. This is to give the bonnet extra strengthening. That's why it's welded onto the underside of the bonnet, all this baffling. So it doesn't come up too quickly in an accident. I'm going to leave this here because there's just so much to cover, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to go through each of these books individually. But a lot of it I've taken on board, and it's really, really fascinating. And I hope you found that fascinating, because this is the Bible as far as I'm concerned about Mark 1s. I was looking for the Bible as opposed to the Haynes manual, because I don't really like the Haynes manual that much. This is far better. So you know what to look out for. Go and check them on eBay, but most of them are in German. If you can get one in English, good luck. Grab it, because they're invaluable, and I'm pleased that I've managed to get the collection and share it with you all. Anyway, take care, guys. See you in another Mark 1 video. Stay safe.